It is just after 10 p.m. in Israel right now, where a momentous day for Israelis was juxtaposed with fury for Palestinians. Jerusalem, the site of a history-making moment to coincide with the 70th anniversary of Israel's founding. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, joined by Ivanka Trump and her husband Jared, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, and members of Congress for the official recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And very importantly, the keeping of President Trump's campaign promise to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. For decades, that's been promised by U.S. presidents. Now, with this president, it is a reality. But look what happened less than 50 miles away at the Gaza border. This. Thousands of Palestinians rushed the security fence with firebombs and explosive devices, and they were met, after being warned that if they did that, that would happen, with Israeli defense firing back. 52 dead at this hour, 2,400 injured, and anger is spreading. You're looking at protests happening in Istanbul, Turkey, and you can see that protesters, as the sun goes down, are gathering against this embassy move. Walid Phares was the man Donald Trump called in during the presidential campaign to guide him in foreign policy, specifically the Middle East. Walid, I'm glad you're here with us right now, because as a Lebanese-born American, you have a unique perspective on what is a day of mixed news in Israel. First, to President Trump's promise that this day, this ceremony in the embassy would move to Jerusalem. Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, I've lived this during my days in Beirut. That's 28 years ago. I can feel the feelings on the ground and how parties are locked into conflicts that are decades and sometimes centuries. But putting this on the side, you have two things happening at the same time. You have a bilateral relationship between the United States of America and Israel, which is now culminating with the United States moving its embassy to Jerusalem and making sure that this embassy represents the United States to the state of Israel. That is different from the United States' forthcoming future relationship with the Palestinian state, which will have a capital, and they will have the same. Now, what's happening in Gaza is something else. It's protests, basically, which could have taken place inside Gaza, at the border of Gaza, like all protests, like all demonstrations around the world. The difference is that the organizers have moved these demonstrations across the border. And when you do across the border, that's what you have.
Yeah, and those are Israeli drones dropping tear gas. So this day of, quite frankly, pure joy for most Israelis marred by violence, would you have advised the president to do anything differently?
That's a very difficult question. You know, embodying what the American public wanted, and way before Donald Trump becomes a president. We're talking about since the mid-1990s, Congress, both parties, all presidential candidates, most presidents wanted to move the embassy to Jerusalem. So this is a consensus. When would it happen? Well, the president chose, his administration chose it should happen now, because probably they have an eye on the regional situation, which we will start to understand with time. Probably what needs to be done is to close in the file with the Palestinians with the help of the Arab coalition and the Arab League. That's what I think is missing. That's why you see these events in Gaza.
Correct. And we've seen a Sunni-Israeli coalition. You know, the Saudis, the Jordanians, the Egyptians work well, at least, as these things go with the Israelis. It's not just the Israelis and the American people. It's Congress. Congress, many members were right there during the ceremony. Lindsey Graham was one of them, the senator from South Carolina. And you put religion aside, here's what he said.
I voted for this in 1995 when I was a freshman member of Congress. Thank you, President Trump. And why does it matter? There's no nation on earth that provides us with better intelligence about radical Islam than Israel. There's nobody who tells us more about Iran than Israel. So Israel makes us safer, and the least we can do is recognize their capital. If you got a problem with Jerusalem being the capital of Israel, take it up with God.
Really quickly, Walid, obviously Israel has been a very important ally when it comes to these Islamic terrorists around the world.
There is no doubt about it. I mean, the relationship between the U.S. and Israel has always been one of strategic alliances. I mean, who can counter that? But what should happen is the United States mounting alliance with the Arab coalition should help in solving the Palestinian problem.